This is episode number 460 of the Health and Fitness Podcast by InnerFight, brought to you in association with Smith Street Paleo, dishing you up paleo meal plans delivered to your home or office. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, the 9 to 5, whatever you want, customize your plan. Give those guys a shout. hello@smithstreetpaleo.com or hop over to the website, smithstreetpaleo.com. And as we have been doing for a long time, you can still grab a complimentary bag of Smith Street Paleo goodies if you go over to iTunes, rate and review the podcast for us, and then let us know you've done it by sending an email to winning@innerfight.com. Inner Talks number 16, folks. Thursday, October the 11th at 8 a.m. here at InnerFight with the legendary Omar Noor talking about the fight for survival. This is one not to miss. We'll definitely podcast that talk a week later, but if you can get here to InnerFight on October the 11th, I can guarantee you this is going to be one of the best Inner Talks that we have done yet. Inner Talk 16, October the 11th, 8 a.m. at InnerFight. Today's show, Andre and Tom sit down and have a discussion all about concurrent training. Hope you guys enjoy the show. Thanks for tuning in.
Welcome back to another episode of InnerFight Podcast. Today I'm joined by Tom Walker, our new endurance coach. Tom, welcome to the show, man.
Am I still new?
Oh, man, you're still kind of new. Once you've completed 1 year, you're not new anymore.
Okay.
Or unless we get a new coach.
I'm going to complete that new year as quick as I can.
By the way, we are looking for new coaches, so if you're listening out there, please send us your CV if you're interested in working here at InnerFight DXB. Today we're going to talk about a quite interesting topic called concurrent training. Tom, can you explain what that is and why we're talking about that today?
Concurrent training is very, very simple, but with quite a nice complicated name. It's essentially trying to build endurance at the same time as building strength.
Yeah.
So a lot of people do concurrent training without really realizing it. And a lot of people ask me questions around it without really realizing what they're asking. So I thought it would be a good podcast to do, help people understand a little bit more about, not maybe understand, but actually make them think a bit more about what they're actually trying to achieve with their training.
Yeah, understand the adaptations of both, and if it's possible to actually get adaptation from both at the same time, because
exactly.
I do think a lot of people are scared how, they might only be doing endurance training, running, preparing for triathlon. They're missing out on the whole strength part of things and never train their midline, etc., which they're just afraid to go into the gym because they're afraid it's going to make them bulky and slow for the running or slow for the biking, etc. So what's your thoughts on that? Should people be afraid of hitting the gym while preparing for a triathlon or something longer like that?
I think, as we know, strength training as part of an endurance program is absolutely key. But it's a program that should be developed towards preventing injury and maintaining current strength.
Yeah.
So if you're in a full-time endurance program, it's likely that you're not going to be trying to get stronger in terms of absolute strength at the same time.
And absolute strength, we talk about being able to deadlift more, back squat more, bench press more at the high-end numbers. Your max effort, basically.
Your max efforts, yeah. Your 1 in 3 RMs.
Yeah.
Having said that, though, if you've got a weakness that's causing an injury and you start doing some prehab work, so some little accessory moves in your warm-up or some stuff your physio's given you, you will strengthen that weaker area, but you're just strengthening it to sort of the baseline it should have been at before.
To level it out, kind of.
Exactly.
What are some of the typical things that you see with endurance athletes, that they have to come in and strengthen, like glutes, etc., stuff like that?
Glutes is always the big one, right?
Yeah.
Hip extension,
which
all lies around the glutes. Lower leg, so Achilles, calf, soleus, they're muscles that you don't realize are weak until you start having to run, more volume in your week, 30, 40K, and then you realize, okay, actually I'm getting a bit of lower leg pain, or I can't quite handle this volume. I wonder why, and it's because a lot of people wear rubbish shoes, unfortunately, and shorten their Achilles, shorten their calf muscles, and then they become weak once they're shortened.
Yeah.
So there are areas you see a lot of.
Don't you think that also the initial thought of people that get these pains, that they're like, oh man, I'm just not used to running a lot. Maybe I should just run more just to, adapt to pain or get used to it, etc. But maybe it's not really about getting used to it. It's, you have an issue. How do you know the difference between, oh, I'm just not used to this explosive running, or maybe I'm actually just not strong enough to handle it?
Yeah, we can do tests. So
Okay.
a really simple test of like Achilles length and whether it's actually in a position to be strengthened well is like a knee to wall. So you simply put your foot toe against the wall,
Yeah.
bend your knee, push your knee towards the wall.
Yeah.
If it touches, then you can move your toe back slightly, push again, and go back to the point until your heel lifts.
Yeah.
Once your heel lifts, then your Achilles at its longest point.
Yeah.
And then you stop there, and then you do sort of 10 to 15 knee to walls.
Yeah.
And over the coming weeks, hopefully you'll see it lengthen,
Yeah.
and therefore be in a stronger position to work.
Yeah.
But it may be that you've got like a long Achilles, and that's not the issue. The issue is a strength issue. So we'd look at doing a strength test, like a single leg calf raise,
Okay.
and just seeing how many reps you can do. If you're doing under sort of 15, you I'd probably say you've got a weak lower leg. If you can do like a 30 or more, you're all right. You're going to be able to handle a fair decent bit of running.
So together with endurance training, you must match it with some strength training.
I think the word "must" is difficult. Should you? Yeah, you probably should. Must? No. There's loads of endurance athletes out there that don't.
Okay. And the general things we talked about was glutes and lower leg. Is there any other things? I know you've spoken to me about running and how it's important that I strengthen my anti-rotation so that when I run that I don't collapse to the side, but I can rather keep my torso completely tight throughout each sort of punch in the ground with my feet.
Yeah. So, like, if we looked at you wouldn't say you're weak, right? So you haven't got a weak torso, you haven't got a weak hip complex. So it's more, what are the cues, or how do we develop the pathways to get you to use your strength in a different way?
Yeah.
And I think that's where maybe some of the CrossFit guys who come to me are getting a bit annoyed. They're like, I can do this like 20-minute CrossFit workout that's really high heart rate and I feel really good, but I can't go and run for like half an hour non-stop.
Yeah. And
I think that's where this concurrent training confusion maybe is coming in. And I think it's based a lot around high-intensity interval training being pushed to the forefront so much with like, this will improve your fitness.
Yeah.
And yes, it will improve your fitness, but fitness is such a broad term. What are we talking about?
Yeah, exactly. People throw that term around like it's everybody knows what it means, but we all have different definitions of it, and it's such a broad term. If we talk CrossFit, it's a very, 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 very broad term.
Yeah.
Like, there's so many things that are included here. So talking about specifically endurance athletes that join the CrossFit gym, how many times a week should they be coming to the gym? Is it okay for them? Should they continue to do it? Should they go in less time per week in certain phases? How would that look like?
Yeah, so I think this is the forefront of concurrent training is, first of all, work out your main discipline you want to be good at.
Yep.
So if we're talking about an endurance guy, which you just asked about, then they need to be aerobically fit.
Yep.
So everything needs to be focused on aerobic fitness, and everything else should complement it or run concurrently alongside it.
Yeah.
So, yes, endurance athletes, by all means, can come along to the gym, do a workout, do whatever class they like, but they've got to be disciplined enough to not push to the point where they're going to be so sore the next day that it's going to affect their running.
So it doesn't interfere with their main session.
Their main session. The other thing is they come along to a class, and this is what I've been asked a few times, is they come along and the class is, say 1RM back squat, or it's a heavy back squat, and they like, I can't get anywhere near what other people are doing, and I'm saying, well, no, you're training to run.
Yeah,
but I want to improve my back squat. Well, you can't. Not saying you can't have both, but this is where the interesting point and where the studies show that if you're new, so Joe Bloggs walks off the street, they've never run a 10K and they've never done CrossFit, they are in a month going to PR their 10K, they're going to PR their back squat, they're going to PR, all the workouts because they're brand new. Their body's being exposed to a new stimulus and it will react and it will shoot them up and they'll feel great about it.
Yeah.
But say like I've got a 5-year athlete who's done marathons for 5 years, they're very aerobically fit, and they come in and they've never done strength training before, I can probably say to them, yeah, in a month we can get you to PR your back squat, but your aerobic fitness is going to stay pretty similar.
Yeah.
You're not guaranteed to go faster with it. On the opposite side, if someone comes in who's very strong and they say, I want to improve my 10K time, I'm like, yeah, we can get you to improve your 10K time, but don't expect any strength gains. And that's what the sort of the science behind it is the least developed the athlete, the easier it is for them to make progress in all fields of fitness.
Yeah.
The more developed you are down the line. So even the guys who are listening to this probably like 3 years doing CrossFit, like you're developed athletes, you're developed within CrossFit.
Your training age is not zero. Like that's where you can be looking at, right? Like an athlete's training age, whether they're 40 years old or 20, if the 20-year-old has been training fitness for the past 5 years, they might have an older training age than the 40-year-old that just started yesterday.
Exactly. Yeah. So you've got to get yourself to define what it is you actually want to do. And if you are, like we just talked about, a bit more of a developed athlete, you get further away from being able to do everything.
Yeah. And this is such an interesting topic when with regards to CrossFit, because we're trying to improve so many different things at both ends of the spectrum. Like you can be exposed to a competition where you have to do a 1 rep max deadlift, bench, and squat, and 20 minutes later you might have to do a 90-minute long endurance event.
Yeah.
How do you develop yourself in order to be able to smash both events? Well, it's sort of like you said, you got to bring both up to a certain baseline, and then from there you have to, if you're super strong, well, then in the meantime, don't expect those numbers to go up while you focus on that endurance base. And I think we see that a lot with the programming nowadays, that people get specific running coaches or strength coaches, or they get all these specialty coaches come in and help them, and they go through almost like phases of aerobic development. I mean, we're seeing more and more periodized programs out there. Not that I personally agree that is the solution, but it seems to be working, and at least bringing those baseline numbers up.
Yeah. So what do you do, mate? What's your experience with it?
Well, I think for games athletes, it can make sense to do more like periodization, and more like 3 months of aerobic work into 3 months of strength, or whatever, however they structure it. But for my level, where I've only been to regionals once, I'm not like a top competitor in the field yet. I'm building to become one of the better and the best. And right now, my CrossFit base still needs a lot of work, which means that I still need to be better at all the different combinations. I still need to be, develop my skill level, my capacity in certain things. And I won't necessarily, in the events I will go to yet, be exposed to 2-hour bike rides or more single modality stuff. I can, but my focus has been towards actually qualifying to compete at the competition and be good enough. And then at the competition I might suffer a little bit because I'm more of a, let's say, an open athlete or a qualification athlete. This is a very different type of athlete. Like, we can look at Brent Fikowski. He can barely qualify for regionals, but he's a top guy at the games.
Yeah.
I mean, that comes down to peaking and etc. But I think for many of us that are not at that top level yet, we still need to build our CrossFit, and that is mixed modal stuff all the time. And like, I know for myself, I used to do a lot of single modality stuff, and I used to only do my weightlifting together with only weightlifting movements, my rowing only with rowing, etc. But as soon as they were coupled together, I was shit in both.
Right.
I was great in each of them solely, but together, I wasn't good.
Yeah.
And so, you have to train those combinations. But I do think for the high-level athletes that are already so good and have established such a good base level of CrossFit, they can now start tapping into what endurance athletes or powerlifters are doing in order to improve whatever they necessarily need to.
Yeah, because one of the problems with concurrent training, and one of the reasons that you start to slow down as you get more developed as an athlete, is the fact that you overreach too far.
Yeah.
So overreaching is what gets us to actually develop. So you've got to push past a certain point of comfort, and then the body adapts to that.
It's a super compensation kind of principle.
So as you get more developed, you have to push harder and overreach more.
Yeah.
But you can only do that in one area at a time, really. Otherwise, you're going to push your body too much. Unless you're a full-time athlete and can go and sleep and rest, and when you're not walking around, you've got your feet up.
Yeah.
So that's one area that I think I probably see the most of here, is people trying to improve both ends of the spectrum, and they just end up in this middle. We call it the grey zone a lot.
Call it CrossFitters.
And they're completely overreached, and it leads longer term to like adrenal fatigue and like overstressing and stress fractures and things like that.
And that just means you don't progress.
You don't progress, and you go back. So you've had a great 2 weeks. You feel really good, and then you have a crap week, and then you wonder like, oh, why is this? And then you think, oh, I need to push harder.
Yeah.
You don't let yourself recover, and you will get stress symptoms from it.
Yeah.
And that doesn't just mean you've had a bad day and you're tired. It means the body will start to break down, because the lifting, the CrossFit work, the real max strength, you need to be in your anabolic state for it to get the testosterone release to help muscles grow and recover properly. And then you're going to go and back it up with trying to run a 10K or do a huge chipper workout on the weekend, and that's going to put you into a catabolic state. So you're actually breaking muscle down. So the body's like, well, what do you want me to do here? Do you want me to increase muscle, or do you want me to break it down? Because you're asking me to do both. So that would be my argument for periodization is, right, it doesn't have to be a 3-month block here.
No.
We can do 3 weeks of more run training. You're still going to get your strength, but it's going to be low intensity. It's going to be the same spectrum as what we look for in an aerobic workout. So low heart rate and more muscular endurance type training. Then once we've done that and we've built your pace up, now we've got an idea of your aerobic pace that you can run all day at. We're going to maintain your aerobic work with all-day pace stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe 1 run a week.
So in this build-up, we have 3 weeks where you really focus on building the running, the aerobic base. After the 3 weeks, you kind of flatten it out and you stay at your go-to level, your go-to pace. So not where you're trying to overachieve anymore. But for the first 3 weeks, you're sort of pushing it, trying to make the adaptations, and then you flatten it out in the end.
Yeah, exactly. And then you can sort of be at a maintenance point with your running. So we know your all-day easy pace that isn't going to affect you. We've worked that out over the past 3 weeks. So we're going to add in 1 of those a week just to keep your legs knowing what that feels like. And then now you want to improve your threshold work, say within CrossFit. So something like a typical Metcon workout, right? So you're dealing with a lot of lactate.
Yeah.
Well, actually running sprints, so like Track Tuesday sprints, it's the same feeling you're going to get from doing, every minute on the minute 10 squats or something like that, right? Or maybe something a bit faster.
Okay. Yeah.
Give me an example, like
heart rate wise, but not
heart rate, muscle feeling. So like when you finish a track workout, your legs are pretty shot. Yeah, you feel your whole body is in a lactate. Lactate mess, lactate soup as we like to call it.
Yeah.
When you do something like,
let's say thrusters,
thrusters
or assault bike, or that's
exactly
what people can relate to.
Same feeling, yeah. Same feeling. Different modalities, but same feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So now we can start to piece those two together.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, you're doing the thrusters. Okay, it's a squat movement, and it's a more powerful movement, but it's the same. You're dealing with the same lactate, whether you've just run 300 meters flat out or you've just done 15 thrusters.
Yeah.
So now we're being smarter with your training and using those two to complement each other. Then you got to look at like, okay, I now actually feel weak in my thrusters. So it's like, all right, well, then we maybe need a strength block.
Yeah.
So you can work the next 3 weeks on getting stronger.
Yeah.
You cut down on your aerobic base, because to get stronger, you don't want to be going catabolic. We want to be going anabolic. So your 15K long run at easy pace becomes 10K easy pace run. We keep in sort of 1 threshold session to keep things ticking over, and the rest we dedicate to strength.
Yeah.
So you're constantly moving pieces around. What we're not trying to do is chuck everything in the bucket and say, right, I want to get better at all of them.
So it's going to take some overview, some patience, and some constant feedback from the client or the athlete, so that constantly if you're running her up to base, or if you need to change the focus. And what I get the feeling for you saying with the blocks is now like a block could be 2 weeks or 2 months. it's just a question of how much adaptation we're looking for. And I think the better you get, the smaller the blocks can become in some sense. Like, I know for myself, I'm not a strong squatter. I'm not a terrible squatter, but we can go through, a couple of months of just building it up a few kilos so it's back to like middle of the pack level while still maintaining the rest, and then we can always build up again. It's kind of like building a house, right? One block at a time, stone by stone, and it takes a super, super long time. And especially for CrossFit athletes, because we're trying to improve in every single area of your fitness. And that is just hard, like Tom says. Like, not that it's easy to build an endurance athlete, but it seems a bit more straightforward in the sense of we're looking at one set of adaptations more than 1,000 different adaptations.
Yeah, exactly. And it's everything comes into it. So, balancing your nutrition, that will affect how your two training modalities go together. Because if you're doing long, easy runs, you're going to be burning more fat as fuel, hopefully, or we're trying to train you to do that. So you're going to be eating a bit less.
How do you train one to use fat as fuel rather than carbs?
You got to be in the correct training zone. So it's never like, oh, I'm just burning fat today.
No.
It's percentages.
Yeah.
And you can change it through definitely working more aerobically, understanding what aerobic work feels like, and then fueling the aerobic work correctly. So I give a few of my clients between half an hour to 60 minutes of like super easy bike work in the morning, fasted.
How do you define easy? Because I think a lot of people struggle to play around with what easy feels like, what 80% feels like, what hard feels like.
Okay, I'll go through 3 ways. Easy, one way of doing it is, if say we're cycling, you're going to get on the bike and you're going to turn the legs over, but only breathing through your nose. So what that does is it limits your ability to bring oxygen into the body.
Okay, so nasal breathing.
Nasal breathing.
Dude, CrossFitters doing that all the time now. I'm seeing it all the time. What is the explanation behind that? It's just to keep you aerobically.
Keeps you aerobic.
It's kind of like...
It should do. But there's a few caveats. So if you've broken your nose before, you might find it hard to breathe in through your nose, then obviously that's going to be a problem.
Yeah. If your nose is blocked and you have the flu...
That's a problem. So the other way to say that nasal breathing is conversation pace.
Yeah,
but
that's what I've been told before.
When you're sat on your own, like talking to yourself, then nasal breathing is easier to...
I can still have a conversation.
Still have a conversation, it's fine. The better way of looking at it is defining your heart rate zones, which has been talked about before on the podcast.
Yeah.
But essentially, don't do 220 minus your age. That's not the way to do it. Either you do a lactate threshold heart rate test.
And what would that look like?
That would look like sort of a build-up warm-up.
Mm-hmm.
So running easy for 2 minutes, running a bit harder for 4 minutes, and then running sort of at what we would call tempo for 4 to 5 minutes. So your heart rate's getting up nicely. Then you'd stop, walk, do your stretches, and then you'd set off on a 30-minute run time trial or bike time trial.
Yeah.
10 minutes into that, you would then hit lap on your watch and you would take the final 20 minutes of your average heart rate for that. And then hopefully that you've gone all in on there. And then that last 20 minutes will give us an idea of your threshold heart rate. So the heart rate you can work at while your lactate threshold is still at a place where your body can deal with it.
Yeah.
If you go over it, your body can't deal with the lactate anymore. Well, it's actually the hydrogen buildup. And you will just stop. That's where your body stops you.
Yeah.
So you sort of plateau out at this threshold heart rate. And then from there, we can take away percentages. So it's going to be, you're going to work at between 60 to 70% normally as your aerobic work of that threshold heart rate.
Yeah.
Below that would be recovery, so 40 to 50%. And then above it would be sort of you going into more threshold development work. Over threshold, you're going into max work. So you can define your zone 2 if you like that way. Power tests are similar. So with the bike we use power. Again, you can do a 20-minute all-in test and then work out percentages of that.
Is that the FTP test?
FTP test, yeah. There's a few others coming out around that, but the FTP is like the most basic one. And then, and then for running, there's also something that we call the MAF test, which is MAF, developed by a guy called Dr. Maffetone. And he worked out that roughly your aerobic heart rate is 180 minus your age.
Okay.
I can't remember exactly how he worked it out. I should know that, and I will go away and find out. But so he says 180 minus your age.
That's your aerobic. That's not your threshold. That's below your threshold.
That's aerobic. That's all-day conversation pace.
Yeah.
So you then go out and you run at that heart rate, and then what you normally find with people who haven't done it before is they hit a pace, and then the pace drops. Obviously, if you imagine two lines on a screen, they run linear to each other, and then the heart rate should stay the same, and you'll see the pace line drop down. Okay? Then once you've built his whole thing is developed around keeping those two lines as constant as you can, but obviously that takes training. His whole method is based around lifestyle and health, and it is a really good method to look into. I've taken, or a lot of coaches take the heart rate method side of it, and then use that because it's a good place to work from an aerobic point of view. So going back to the original point, you've found out what your aerobic heart rate is, and then you subscribe that to your aerobic work. So you've got to have an idea of what you're actually doing. It's like walking into a gym and not knowing really what you're meant to be squatting. Like you don't know whether you're doing max strength or strength endurance or hypertrophy. Similar with endurance stuff is you've got to have a figure, and you've got to test it.
You have a client. He's a CrossFitter, and he's going to be tested in a 5K in the next event he's going to compete in. How would you program for him? Would he have to do a lot of Zone 2 1-hour runs, or would he only stay in about that 20-minute time frame that he's going to be working at?
How long have I got to train him? 2
months.
2 months? Has he done any run work before?
He's a decent runner. He's an average CrossFitter, bubble athlete, pretty good at everything. Not specifically running, just pretty average in everything.
2 months. I spend the first month defining his fitness, or certainly spend the first week defining his fitness. So I would get him to do his run fitness. So I would get him to do that lactate threshold heart rate test. And then
on the run, 30 minutes
for the run, and then spend the first sort of month giving him stuff based around that sort of 5K goal. So what are the other guys running it at? What do you want to run it at? Let's see if you can actually hit that run pace. And then you would retest again probably at the start of the second month to see if any difference has been made.
Same 30-minute test?
Same 30-minute
so
test.
Only with basically aerobic runs in beginning?
No, well, it really would depend on how he's running, obviously.
Because what I'm trying to ask is that I think a lot of people struggle to understand how running super slow for a long time in Zone 2 gives them a benefit for when they're going to slam themselves for 20 minutes at their threshold pace. I understand the benefit, but I want everyone else to understand it.
So what running in Zone 2 does is it develops your aerobic capacity. So that is the body's ability to transfer oxygen around the body. And the better you are at that, the better you will be at recovering, the better you will be at the longer workouts, the better you'll be at being consistent. If you don't have that aerobic base, or what we sometimes refer to as like a deep well, aerobic well, then you will fly out the blocks normally, and then you'll suffer for it later on. So it's actually really beneficial to have a good aerobic base. But so back to this guy, if he's only got that 2 month block, you sort of, by the end of the first month, you've kind of figured out what he could achieve. And then I would probably cut out the aerobic work and just put him into like pacing work.
And how would that look?
You've got like 400 repeats, 1K repeats, getting him used to that feeling. So we want you to run a 5K in 20 minutes. So it's going to be 4 minute per K pace. So let's get you dialed into 4 minute per K pace. And then you can look at, so maybe if he goes onto a track workout and he does say a couple of 400s and he feels really good for the first 4, he's doing 8 400s, he feels really good for the first 4 and then he just dies afterwards, then you can sort of say, all right, so it's your speed endurance. So it's maintaining speed over a long time.
Yeah.
Now, why is that dropping off? Is it your form? Yeah, you're landing out with your foot too far. You're muscling through the run stroke.
Dude, you talking about me?
Mate, I'm looking at you dead in the eyes. No, not necessarily, but it's what you commonly see with guys who are strong. And then, so we need to look at that. Right, dial back on the 400 paces. Let's work on consistency. And then you're going to have a bit more energy to finish off those last 4, so we keep the speed endurance in the workout.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that avenue can go off down loads of different ways.
Yeah.
Loads of different ways.
And speed endurance in CrossFit specifically, we can look at like intervals. For example, let's say 15 wall balls, 12 power cleans, 9 bar facing burpees, rest 1 minute, 10 rounds. That would be your ability to recover in that 1 minute and perform the same time for all those 10 rounds, for example.
Exactly. It's holding the consistent pace. Because that's what you probably would see most in, or what I see in a lot of the guys who run around the building here, is they're awesome for the first sort of corner of the building, and then it just drops. Whereas I'm thinking, if you just set off at what you know is your like aerobic pace, and then when you hit the last corner and think, oh, I still feel good for a sprint here, you can finish stronger. And we see it at the track every week. People start off far too quick, and then dive for it at the end. And it's not...
It's the ego that drives it, right?
The ego drives it, but also lack of knowing the pace you should be going at.
What's your thought on heart rate monitors? I know we've been speaking a lot about this in previous talks and in shows and on the InnerFight Endurance Instagram. I know you guys have done some Instagram TV on this.
Yeah.
But I know for myself, I struggle to correlate my heart rate to my effort. Not in running specifically, but in CrossFit. So I've been running with my heart rate most of our sessions on the track Tuesdays, and I literally PR my heart rate almost every single time. I keep hitting new PRs, but it's not because I've never pushed that hard in my life before, because I've done CrossFit workouts that just mentioning makes me scared to say again. But I know in those workouts, I haven't been that high before. And I've also done a 30-minute max bike test. And I also haven't been up there. I've done a lot of things that are really painful, but I have never been as high as I am in running. Does it make sense for CrossFitters in CrossFit workouts to use their heart rate monitors to base their pace on? Like, because there's few CrossFitters that are using it. They're successful with it. I know, they constantly look throughout the workout regionals to make sure, that they're in the right zone, etc. But I know for myself, it's like my heart rate in a workout where there's high skill movements or very grip fatiguing movements where it's just muscular fatigue limits me before my heart rate peaks.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, can we use it for workouts, or does it have to be? Should it be in a specific cases like a 333 event with a 3K row, 300 double unders, and 3-mile run? There, I definitely see, where you can kind of lay. You've been running a lot, so you know exactly. For 3 miles, you could stay at whatever 175 beats per minute, but
so first of all, like, you're probably PRing your heart rate up at the track, because have you ever done track work before in the heat that we've had here this summer? Obviously,
wasn't that hot.
So have you ever done that type of work before?
No.
So you're gonna do it, right? You're gonna PR. I've had a few PRs up there, and I've been running for years and years, some horrendous workouts as well, like in heat chambers and things like that. But the rate we push to at the track with the heat that we've had here this summer, you're going to hit it. Yeah. In terms of using heart rate within CrossFit, I think, no. I personally wouldn't subscribe athletes to it in the workout.
No.
But I would around recovering and setting a ceiling for effort.
Yeah.
So you can't just start using it and then expect things to make sense. You need data, and lots of it. So the more we can back up data, back up every week, being consistent. So every morning, resting heart rate. Not one morning out of the week when you've remembered. It needs to be every morning.
Do you have to do that with the heart rate monitor, or can you do it by thumb on your pulse? Or
definitely not your thumb on your pulse, because you've got a little pulse in your thumb.
Times 10, do it.
Hey, you can definitely wake up in the morning, stick a heart rate monitor on, which is the best way to do it. We use an app or all of us coaches use an app called HRV for training, which is an excellent app for it.
Yeah.
There's others out there, Elite HRV. Or you can go old school. Set your timer off on your phone for half a minute, so 30 seconds. Finger on your pulse and count how many, and then double it, and that'll give you your resting heart rate.
Yeah.
Whatever you find easiest, right? So that would give us an idea of a resting heart rate. And then what we can do is look between competitions, how quickly do you get back down to your resting heart rate, or at least within like 10 beats of it. So that would be a very good way of using it. But there's no point in going to a competition and then in your recovery taking your resting heart rate and then coming back and being like, oh, this was my resting heart rate.
Yeah.
Great. What is it usually? I don't know. Okay, well, there's no point.
No.
You also, be good to know, so for you, now you have like your absolute max ceilings. So if you're in an indoor competition or even anywhere else other than Dubai, right, that it's going to be cooler than like the 40 degrees it has been at the track, and you take off on the Woodway in the 333, and suddenly your heart rate is reading at you 198, and you're like, oh no, this is a problem, because you've gone over what your initial max was. So we can use it as a ceiling to say, right, you're going to go out hard, but you're going to go out like 10 beats below what we know your max is.
Yeah.
And then that can work for like the rowing, because rowing, similar to running, is it's full body.
Cyclical, simple.
But on the bike, it's not going to work because you're only lower body on the bike. So
Sure.
you'll never reach the same heart rate as you do running or rowing.
Yeah.
So that's the two places I would use it.
Okay, makes super good sense, and I think that's a super good tip for everyone out there, you know, to clear up this confusion that might be about using the heart rate monitor, because it's almost like a trend now as well, just, you know, to drop it on and use it. I know my coach never prescribed it except on my like resting days where we have like easy work where he wants me just to move for like 40 minutes. Then he prescribes it, because you can very easily get excited if you love working out. Like, I'm going to try to push a little bit harder. Like, I'll go, I feel fine. And you keep telling yourself that lie, you freaking believe it.
Yeah.
But the body doesn't understand. Like, the body understands an input. And if that input is not the same that you think it is, that's when you run into trouble, right?
Exactly.
On the other hand, I do recommend that people, if they use, you know, the heart rate monitor on track sessions, that they also get used to not using it at some time, so that they learn to know themselves. Like, I know for myself, it's not sure that I'm going to be able to pace every round and, you know, always have my watch on me. So I try to change it up a little bit. Sometimes I just focus on chasing you guys.
Yeah.
And because I know at a competition I might be running in a group, I need to learn how to position myself in a group, and I need to be able to know what it feels to pick someone up or pass someone or fall behind and be smart, or be, you know, listen to my body, or whatever you want to call it.
It's vital, and we do it a lot within swimming. So people now are starting to wear heart rate more in swimming.
Yeah.
But you see people pushing off the wall and like trying to look at their watch while pushing off the wall to see what their heart rate is or their pace is, and you're just not going to do that. And you're in a swim, like in the sea, you're racing, you're not going to stop and look at your watch and go, oh, I'm at this heart rate. So like getting to feel it. And another really good example actually that I was reminded of this weekend, because it's just been the 70.3 world champs down in South Africa. I competed in it last year over in America.
Yeah.
And I got out of transition onto the bike and looked down at my power meter, wasn't working.
Okay.
And my whole race was based on power. And I suddenly had this like panic attack. I was like, oh no. Yeah. And the reason is you know, it's 2,000 other bikes around you or in the transition area that have all got power meter sensors on. So everything is crisscrossed. Luckily, there's a huge hill at the start of it, and luckily mine picked it up just before the start of the hill, and it calmed me right down.
Yeah.
But I was in like complete panic, not knowing what power I was riding at. And that's something I worked on last year and have worked on a little bit this year, is like learning to just feel what workouts feel like a little bit more. And I will do that at the track as well. So I always say I'm going to run at a certain pace, but it's not always the case. Like, I'll take off and I'll run it exactly how I feel. And then I'll start looking at the watch and then use the pace for a consistent measure. Yeah. But the first few laps, I'm not really looking at pace. I'm going on how I feel. And that's the same when you get off the bike onto the run in a triathlon. It's like, okay, you use the pace as a ceiling, or as like if you're running too slow. But like, if someone overtakes you, you're not going to be like, oh, I'll let him go because I'm running at this pace. with
So-
like 5k to go, you're going to get up on his shoulder and try and go with him, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to just say, oh no, this is the pace I run at, so that's that.
Yeah. Don't let the equipment limit your performance.
Exactly.
And the mind is a huge factor in this.
Huge,
Like,
huge.
you might have peaked your heart rate at 195 in training. When it's game time and you're chasing someone and it's the right time, the right moment, you might be able to exceed that or stay more often. I don't think exceed that heart rate, but stay much closer to it for much longer.
Yeah.
Because when something is really, really important to you and you have a why and you're motivated and driven, I do believe, that's where you can push those limits of keeping your threshold pace even higher for even longer, pushing even harder.
Exactly. And it's also sometimes not knowing what you're running at. So I think we've seen it here a few times, people doing their back squat is they you might chuck a little weight on and they'll be like, oh no, wait, that's 5 kilos too much. And you go, no, it's the same. This is your PR. You'll do this easy. And they go up and do it, and then you go, yeah, you just PR'd your back squat by 5 kilo. Well done.
Yeah.
And they didn't realize. But if you told them, right, we've gone 5 kilo up here.
Yeah. Because I know that feeling. You'll be running, you're like, oh my goodness, I can never hold this pace. Just drop off your watch and just go, and you realize maybe you could.
Yeah. Maybe you can't. Even better.
Yeah, like we put ceilings for ourselves, and we put these limitations, and sometimes, it's just all limitations. Like, you have these numbers, and especially compared to, we tend to compare ourselves. Like, for example, okay, I can only, let's say I'm running with a big group, and everyone, let's say everyone was super slow, but I know all these guys are amazing athletes. Maybe I just run slow with them.
Yeah.
Because I have in my head, I've put them at the top, and you've put yourself below them, and therefore, even if they go at slow pace and you can run much faster, you're telling yourself, this is my max. This is me going at max effort. Yeah. But when you know yourself good enough, and I mean that comes with years and years and years of exposure to sport and an old training age, then you'll be able to change the gears when you need to.
Exactly. And I think that builds up actually to the last piece of the puzzle for concurrent training is train yourself towards your goals, not because someone else is doing something.
Yeah.
So something that I've seen here is like when I moved out here in the summer, this is like height of our race season in the UK.
Yeah.
Now I essentially have gone back to like base season. So everyone gets to do the fun work, the peaking work.
Yeah.
And I'm back to doing like the long bikes, the base work.
Yeah.
And it almost feels like, I've had like the shortest season in the world, but my season will kick off again at the end of October.
Yeah.
And I'll be so thankful that I've put in the work now.
Yeah.
If I'd come out here and done every workout that the other guys say, like we're going to the World Champs we're going to do, or a few of the guys who've gone back to the UK to race, like I'd have been burnt out so quickly.
Yeah.
So that's where it comes back to like just having a word with yourself, having a clear, focused goal and a plan.
Yeah.
And you may not even need, we're not saying you've got to have a coach to show you how to do that plan and how to measure it, but knowing in your own head, even just writing it down on paper will help you be clear with it. So when you walk in the gym and people are getting stronger and everyone's high-fiving because they've PR'd their back squat, and you go, I wish I could have, I want to do that. But then actually you will do that.
If you plan for it.
If you plan for it. In a few months, your time will come. But for now, do what you want to do, because actually the other week you saw someone run a 10K and you were really inspired. And you want to do that 10K. So the moment you're going to train for that 10K. And then 2 months later, you're going to get that back squat feeling. But you can't have both. Or unless, you're brand new to it.
Yeah.
Or are very unlikely you'll get to have both.
There's a famous quote that says, I think it's Winston Churchill, it's, he who fails to plan is planning to fail.
Yeah.
I think that's Winston Churchill. And that pretty much sums up what you're saying. Stick to what you want instead of getting dragged into all these different directions. I especially see people in CrossFit getting confused by this because they get excited about seeing other people do certain things. Like we watch the CrossFit Games, then everybody wants to do the CrossFit Games workouts. But maybe your goal is to qualify for regionals, and actually all you need to focus on is preparing for the Open. And you don't need to do 90-minute road bike because it's never going to come in the Open.
No.
You're going to have to be good at thrusters and burpees. So having a plan, and I do think that you need a coach. I think that everyone needs a coach or at least someone to guide you regardless of how good you are. Like, having someone that can map out the plan, even if you map out the plan together with them, which I think is even better, especially if you're a mature athlete, that is just gold worth. Having somebody who can guide you in dark times and in good times. And
I think that you are right there. Even if you just pay a coach for an hour of their time to help you map something out, you might have, like, I have a remote athlete, and they're building a really big campaign. It's a 2-year-long campaign. And we had a phone call the other week, and it was a 40-minute phone call, and I barely said a word, but he just bounced everything back and forth off me.
Yeah.
And at the end he went, "That's so helpful, thank you so much." And I was like, "Yeah, no worries." Because he'd already done it. He'd done the plan.
Yeah.
He knew what he was doing. He just wanted to voice it off someone else.
Yeah.
And I am exactly the same with my coach. I actually have 2 coaches now, and I almost sometimes feel like, why am I paying 2 coaches to coach me into something I know I can do? And then I'll realize that I want to go and I want to PR my 5K, and I want to run a 3-hour marathon, and I want to do this, and I want to do that. And I'm like, that's why I have coaches, because I want to sit down with them, bounce my ideas, and then them go yes or no, or help me figure it out.
Yeah.
And you don't have to pay a coach full time. Might have to just pay him for an hour. But I think you're right. I'm with you as well, mate. Coaches are so key for that performance management.
Yeah, definitely. Cool, man. This has been a pretty good talk.
Yeah.
It's I hope that you guys have been learning some new stuff. If you want to learn more about these things, then hop over to the InnerFight Endurance Instagram. I know that you guys are running some pretty cool Q&As and live shows every single week.
Yeah.
And they're even saved on Instagram TV, so you can easily go back and listen to some of those.
Yeah, exactly. And send in questions. We get about 8 a week, which is really good, and we try and get them all answered in like a 10-minute show.
Yeah.
So it's quite quick, concise information, good for viewing on like quick weekend while having a coffee. And then we'll do a sort of longer podcast once a month to get through the meatier stuff like we've done today.
Yeah.
It's a good way of it working.
Thank you so much,
No worries,
and
mate.
thank you guys for listening. We'll be back soon with another show.